Welcome to today's deep dive into the source material. We're looking at an excerpt from text today, specifically focusing on the revenue-backed digital assets protocol.
Right, and our mission here is really to uncover why traditional digital assets, why they struggle so much with real-world commerce.
Exactly. And we also want to explore this structural shift toward institutional-grade blockchain infrastructure. Because think about it. Have you ever wondered why using digital assets to buy something simple, like a coffee, still feels incredibly risky for merchants?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why hasn't the space figured out everyday commerce yet?
Well, it really boils down to a structural flaw. There is this constant tug of war between saving and spending. So on one hand, you have reserve assets, and those are built to act as a store of value. They're designed to appreciate over time and, protect against inflation.
So you hold on to them hoping the purchasing power goes up. But a payment currency has a completely different job.
Yeah, merchants definitely don't want a roller coaster. They need strict stability, strict predictability when they accept payments for goods.
Right. Imagine running your own business where the money you accept in the morning might just lose its purchasing power by the time you close the register at night.
It's a nightmare for accounting. But early blockchain models kind of ignore that reality. They attempt to mash both of those opposing functions together.
Wait, you mean they force one token to do both jobs?
Exactly. You have the speculative asset you hoard and the stable medium of exchange you spend, all shoved into a single token.
It's like trying to buy your weekly groceries using shares of a volatile tech stock. It just doesn't work. By forcing it to do both, the system just inevitably drifts toward pure speculation, right?
Yeah, rather than supporting real economic use.
Yeah.
Because early on, those networks relied heavily on sheer market liquidity and, well, hype just to get off the ground.
Right, because if a token's main appeal is that it might double in value by next week, people are just going to hoard it.
And that makes it impossible to operate a stable business on that infrastructure.
So a fundamentally different architecture is required to achieve real utility. Here's where it gets really interesting. Our text excerpt outlines Interlink's approach to transaction-backed digital assets.
Right. The industry is shifting. Value creation is no longer driven solely by market liquidity. Interlink is anchoring it to measurable, real-world usage.
But mechanically, how does a transaction actually back an asset? I mean, a transaction is just a fleeting event. It's not like a vault of gold sitting somewhere.
Well, think about traditional financial infrastructure. When millions of people swipe debit cards every day, those networks generate immense value through tiny fractions of revenue on every single swipe.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so in a revenue-backed digital asset protocol, the underlying value isn't based on hype. It is intrinsically tied to that real economic engine.
Right.
The sheer volume of daily, reliable commercial activity generates revenue, and that measurable foundation literally backs the network's assets.
Instead of a currency hoarding value just by sitting in a digital vault, the actual economic engine of people making daily transactions becomes the very mechanism that reinforces the asset's value.
Exactly. There's a great quote from the source material that sums this up perfectly. It says, "Transactions are no longer the endpoint of value transfer. They become the starting point of value creation."
That makes perfect sense now. In the old model, you buy a coffee, the token changes hands, and the transaction is over.
Right, that was the endpoint.
But under Interlink's architecture, the act of transacting generates the very revenue that gives the underlying network its value.
So the more the asset is used in real commerce, the more stable the infrastructure becomes. The everyday economic activity itself is the engine.
So what does this all mean? For you, the listener, it signifies a massive transition from systems driven by pure speculation to infrastructure grounded entirely in real economic activity.
Which leaves us with a final question to mull over. If the future of institutional-grade blockchains relies entirely on this transaction-backed, revenue-generating utility, what happens to the massive ecosystem of purely speculative tokens? Once measurable economic utility becomes the strict new standard for value, will those hype-based assets simply become obsolete?